Family called my YouTube career a phase. Now they're begging for my financial advice after seeing my hidden fortune. The polished silverware gleamed under the restaurant's warm lighting as my family gathered for my father's 70th birthday celebration. From the outside, we appeared to be the perfect picture of a happy, successful family marking a milestone occasion. Crystal glasses clinked, waiters weaved between tables with elegant precision, and laughter floated across our corner of the upscale establishment. But beneath this carefully constructed veneer of familial harmony lay years of tension, dismissal, and quiet resentment. "So, Alex, still doing that YouTube thing?" My Uncle Gerald's voice boomed across the table, drawing everyone's attention. He swirled his whiskey as he asked the question, the same one he'd been asking for the past decade, always with that same mix of amusement and pity. I offered a practiced smile. "Still at it, yes." "What is it you do again? Something with videos?" my cousin Melissa asked, her tone suggesting she was merely humoring me. "I create educational content about personal finance and investing," I explained, for what felt like the thousandth time. "Helping people understand how money works." Right, Uncle Gerald interjected with a dismissive wave, like those kids filming themselves playing video games. "My neighbor's son does that too, says he's going to be rich." He chuckled, looking around the table for approval. My father cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to defend me. "Let's not bore everyone with Alex's internet hobby. James was telling us about his new partnership at the law firm." And just like that, the conversation pivoted to my brother's conventional success. I watched as my father's expression transformed from mild embarrassment to unmistakable pride as James detailed his latest corporate triumph. This was the familiar rhythm of our family gatherings, my siblings' traditional achievements celebrated, my unconventional path tolerated at best, mocked at worst. I checked my watch. 7:45 p.m. In exactly 15 minutes, I would change everything. 10 years earlier, I had made the decision that forever altered my family's perception of me. After 3 years at a prestigious investment firm, I announced I was leaving to start a YouTube channel about financial literacy. The reaction had been swift and brutal. "You're throwing away everything you've worked for," my father had said, his voice cold with disappointment. "This internet fad won't last. And then what will you have?" My mother had been more emotional. "We sacrificed so much for your education," she'd said, tears welling in her eyes. "For you to just play on the computer all day?" James, always the golden child with his law school accolades and corporate trajectory, had been more direct. "You'll be back in 6 months when reality hits." Only my sister Emma had offered any support. "If that's what you want, Alex, I hope it works out." The first years had been challenging. I worked 18-hour days, pouring every ounce of my knowledge about finance into digestible, engaging videos that explained complex concepts in simple terms. I lived frugally, reinvesting every dollar I earned back into better equipment, research, and eventually a small team. What my family didn't know, what I deliberately kept from them, was that by the end of year 2, my channel had gained substantial traction. By year 3, I had launched my first online course, which generated over $400,000 in its initial release. By year 5, I had a team of 12 people and was managing a growing empire that included courses, coaching programs, an app, and eventually an actual investment fund. But I kept driving my old Honda to family dinners. I maintained my modest apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. I deflected questions about my finances with vague answers. I let them believe I was barely scraping by because, frankly, I had grown tired of trying to convince them that my path was valid. "Alex barely touches his food at these gatherings," my mother whispered to my aunt loudly enough for me to hear. "Probably can't afford to eat out much these days." I suppressed a smile. The irony was that I owned a significant stake in this very restaurant, along with 11 others across the country. The maitre d' had nearly blown my cover earlier by greeting me with too much deference. I'd tipped him generously to maintain my charade for one final evening. James was now telling the table about his recent vacation in the Maldives. "The overwater bungalow alone was 5 figures a night," he boasted. "But some experiences are worth the splurge." I thought about the private island I'd purchased in the Caribbean last year and took another sip of water. While my family thought I was playing around with an internet hobby, I had built Financial Freedom, the largest online financial education platform in the world. 20 million subscribers across my channels, 30 million users on my app, a team of over 100 employees, an investment fund managing more than $12 billion in assets. Last month, Forbes had valued my company at just over $2 billion. The magazine with my face on the cover was currently tucked into a manila envelope that sat beside me on the table. 7:55 p.m. 5 more minutes. The server appeared at my elbow. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" she asked quietly. "Perfect timing," I murmured back. Could you bring the special item I left at the front now? And the champagne? She nodded discreetly and disappeared. My heart began to race. I had planned this moment for months, rehearsed it countless times. The document inside that innocuous manila envelope would shatter a decade of misconceptions and condescension. Was it petty? Perhaps. But after years of snide remarks and patronizing offers of financial help, I needed to reclaim my dignity. More importantly, I needed my father, just once before it was too late, to look at me with the same pride he showed my brother. The server returned carrying a silver tray with the envelope and a bottle of champagne that cost more than my brother's monthly mortgage payment. She placed them both beside me with a knowing smile. "What's this?" my father asked. Conversation at the table dying down as curiosity took hold. I stood up, suddenly calm. The moment had arrived. "Dad, before we bring out your birthday cake, I wanted to give you a special gift." I picked up the envelope. "Inside this is something I've wanted to share with you, with all of you, for a long time." My father's expression was guarded as he accepted the envelope. "You didn't need to get me anything extravagant, Alex. We know your situation." Those words, your situation, were the final push I needed. The gentle, measured reveal I had planned crystallized into something sharper, more decisive. "Open it, Dad. Please." With deliberate slowness, he broke the seal and pulled out the contents, a financial statement from one of Switzerland's most exclusive private banks, and the recent feature article from Forbes magazine with my face on the cover. His eyes widened as he scanned the document, confusion giving way to disbelief. This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his reading glasses. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I said, my voice steady. "That's my current net worth. And the magazine explains how I built my company, Financial Freedom, from a YouTube channel with 100 subscribers to the largest online financial education platform in the world, valued at just over $2 billion last month." A collective gasp rippled around the table. James nearly choked on his wine. "2 billion?" my father repeated, his voice barely audible. "I have over 20 million subscribers across my platforms now," I continued, finally allowing myself to speak freely about the empire I'd built. "The app has another 30 million users. We've expanded into investment management, with a fund currently overseeing assets of $12 billion. I own significant real estate globally, including a stake in this restaurant and the building that houses your law firm, James." My brother's face drained of color. "But you make YouTube videos," Uncle Gerald sputtered, his earlier condescension evaporating. "I create educational content that changes lives," I corrected him. "I teach financial literacy to people who never had access to that knowledge before. My courses have helped thousands of families escape debt, build emergency funds, and secure their retirements. And yes, I've become very wealthy doing it." Emma was beaming at me from across the table, tears in her eyes. She had always believed in me, even without knowing the full scope of my success. My mother reached for the magazine with trembling hands. "Why didn't you tell us, Alex, all these years?" I took a deep breath. This was the hardest part. "Because you made it clear you weren't interested. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject. You assumed I was failing because my path didn't look like yours." I looked directly at my father. "I wanted you to be proud of me because of who I am, not because of my bank account. But after 10 years, I realized that might never happen unless I showed you this." The questions came pouring out after the initial shock subsided. "Why live in that small apartment? Why drive that old car? Why let us believe you were struggling all this time?" I shrugged. "At first, I was just focused on building the business. Every dollar went back into growth. By the time the money became significant, too much time had passed. You'd all formed your opinions about my choices." James leaned forward, his legal mind already calculating. "So all those times we offered to help you out financially, I was already earning more in a month than you make in a year," I finished for him. "It was petty, but satisfying nonetheless. I accepted those dinner invitations where you insisted on paying because it seemed important to your ego, not because I needed the free meal." The server chose that moment to return with my father's birthday cake, complete with sparkling candles. The jarring juxtaposition of the celebratory dessert against the emotional revelation unfolding at our table made several people laugh nervously. After an awkward rendition of Happy Birthday, during which my father seemed miles away, lost in thought, the cake was cut and distributed. No one ate much. They were too busy stealing glances at me, as if seeing a stranger in their midst. Uncle Gerald was the first to recover. "You know, Alex, I've been meaning to ask you about my retirement portfolio. Perhaps we could set up a time to—" "Gerald," my mother cut him off sharply. "Not now." My father still hadn't spoken. He kept looking between the financial statement and me, as if trying to reconcile the son he thought he knew with this revelation. Finally, he cleared his throat. I think I owe you an apology, Alex. The table fell silent again. No, Dad, that's not why I... He held up his hand, stopping me. Let me finish. I've spent my entire life believing there was only one path to success and security. The same path my father taught me. A respected profession, a steady climb up the corporate ladder, a gold watch at retirement. He gestured to the documents. You showed me there are paths I couldn't even imagine. And you walked one of them, alone, without my support or understanding. My carefully constructed composure began to crack. This was more than I had hoped for. I'm sorry I didn't listen when you tried to explain your vision, he continued. I'm sorry I measured your worth by standards that were already becoming outdated. Most of all, I'm sorry I made you feel you needed to hide your success to spare my pride. Tears pricked at my eyes. I just wanted you to believe in me, Dad. I should have, he said simply. I see that now. The days following my revelation were nothing short of surreal. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who had suddenly discovered an intense interest in my career and financial advice. My mother, predictably, adapted the fastest. Within a week, she had devoured every article ever written about me or my company, joined all my social media channels, and begun proudly informing strangers that her son was a digital entrepreneur and philanthropist. Mom, you don't need to tell everyone at the grocery store, I told her after receiving a call from an amused friend who had been cornered by my mother in the produce section. I'm just so proud, she said, and I want to make up for all the times I wasn't. Uncle Gerald was more direct in his approach. 3 days after the dinner, he showed up at my apartment unannounced, clutching a folder of investment statements. I've been managing my own portfolio, he explained, spreading the papers across my kitchen counter. But clearly I could be doing better. Would you mind taking a look? I flipped through the statements, noting the high fee, mutual funds, and scattered approach to asset allocation. I'll help you set up a meeting with one of our financial advisors, I offered. They can create a proper plan based on your goals. I was hoping you might handle it personally, he pressed, his expression hopeful, given our family connection. I don't actually manage individual accounts, I explained gently, but our team is excellent. They follow the same principles I teach. He seemed disappointed but accepted the compromise. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. I just want you to know I always thought what you were doing was interesting. I just didn't understand it. I nodded, not trusting myself to respond without sarcasm. 10 years of dismissive comments weren't erased by one night of revelation. James took longer to come around. Pride is a powerful force, especially when you've spent your entire life believing you were on the superior path. 2 weeks after the dinner, he finally called. I'd like to see your operation, he said without preamble. The office, the studio, whatever you call it. Sure, I agreed. How about tomorrow? The following day, I gave him a tour of our headquarters, a modern space occupying 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. He took in the state-of-the-art studios, the busy content team, the investment analysts, the customer service department with genuine curiosity. This is legitimate, he said as we stood in my corner office overlooking the city. I mean, it's a real business, a real company. What did you think it was? I asked. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I think I pictured you alone in your apartment talking into a webcam. Not this. We employ over 100 people, I told him. We've helped millions learn to manage their money. Our investment fund has outperformed the market for 7 consecutive years. He nodded slowly, absorbing this information. And you built all this while we were treating you like the family disappointment. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. That must have been difficult, he said quietly. At times, I admitted, but there was also something freeing about being underestimated. No pressure, no expectations. I could build exactly what I wanted without interference. He smiled ruefully. Well, consider me officially impressed. And for what it's worth, sorry. My father's transformation was the most profound. The man who had dismissed my career choice as frivolous now watched my content with rapt attention. He created accounts on every platform where I published, consuming years of back content like a student cramming for an exam. A month after his birthday dinner, he called me with an unexpected request. I want to learn how to do what you do, he said without preamble. What do you mean, Dad? The videos, the teaching? I've been thinking. I have 40 years of knowledge about small business accounting that could help people. Not on your scale, obviously, but maybe for local businesses or startups. I was momentarily speechless. My father, the traditional accountant who still kept paper ledgers as backups to his computer files, wanted to become a content creator. Are you serious? I finally asked. Completely, he replied. I've been watching how you explain complex concepts, break them down, make them accessible. I could do that for basic accounting principles, if you'd be willing to show me how to get started. And so, at 70 years old, my father became the unlikely star of Small Business Sense. The dad joke name was his idea. We set him up with simple equipment, taught him the basics of recording and editing, and helped him outline his first few videos. His delivery was stiff at first, his manner more formal than contemporary audiences were used to, but there was an undeniable authenticity to his approach that resonated with viewers. Small business owners appreciated advice from someone with decades of real-world experience. Within 6 months, he had built a modest but engaged following and had developed a genuine passion for his new endeavor. I never understood before, he told me one evening as we finished editing his latest video. The connection you feel with your audience, the satisfaction of knowing you've helped someone you've never met. It's addictive. I smiled. That's why I couldn't give it up, even when everyone thought I was failing. He placed his hand on my shoulder. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. The most unexpected outcome of my revelation wasn't the changed family dynamics or even my father's new hobby. It was the profound effect it had on me personally. For years, I had carried the weight of my family's disapproval and misunderstanding, letting it fuel both my drive to succeed and my detachment from them. I hadn't realized how exhausting that burden had been until it was lifted. I finally moved out of my modest apartment into a penthouse that better reflected my actual financial situation. I traded the old Honda for the cars I'd always wanted, but had denied myself to maintain my charade. I began to live openly as the successful entrepreneur I had become, rather than the struggling content creator my family had believed me to be. The freedom was intoxicating. There was no more code switching between my professional life, where I was respected and successful, and my family life, where I was the black sheep who had made questionable choices. For the first time in a decade, I could be one consistent person across all aspects of my life. 3 months after my father's birthday dinner, I invited my entire family to my new home for a housewarming party. I watched their faces as they stepped off the private elevator into the 6,000-square-foot penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "This is where you live now?" my mother asked, running her hand along the marble countertop of the kitchen island. "One of my homes," I admitted. "I also have places in Malibu and a small island in the Caribbean." "An island," James repeated, shaking his head in disbelief. "A small one," I clarified with a smile. As they explored the space, taking in the modern art collection, the state-of-the-art home theater, the terrace with its infinity pool, I realized something important. I wasn't showing them these things to impress them anymore. I was sharing my life with them because I wanted to, not because I needed their validation. That night, as we sat on the terrace watching the sunset paint the city skyline in hues of pink and gold, my father asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Why did you do it this way, Alex? Why hide your success for so long?" I considered my answer carefully. At first, it wasn't intentional. I was just focused on building something meaningful. Then, when success came, faster and bigger than even I had imagined, it felt like it was too late to correct the narrative. You all had such fixed ideas about what I was doing. I paused, looking out over the city. And to be completely honest, there was something liberating about being underestimated. It removed all pressure, all expectations. I could build exactly what I wanted without anyone questioning my methods or motives. My father nodded slowly. "I would have done all those things, wouldn't I?" Questioned, doubted, tried to make you more cautious. "Probably," I admitted. "You were so certain about what success should look like." "And you proved me wrong," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "More wrong than I could have possibly imagined." 6 months after my revelation, the dynamic in our family had shifted dramatically. My financial advice, once dismissed as naive or impractical, was now sought after at every gathering. My brother, who had previously lectured me about real investments, now asked my opinion before making financial decisions. My mother proudly distributed my content to her friends. Uncle Gerald boasted about his personal connection to his golf buddies. What amused me most was how many of them now claimed to have always supported my unconventional path. "I always told you Alex had a good head for business," my Aunt Martha declared at a family barbecue, conveniently forgetting how she had once compared my career choice to her son's brief obsession with becoming a professional gamer. I didn't correct these revisionist histories. What would be the point? The truth was that only Emma had believed in me from the beginning, and she was the only one who didn't suddenly need my financial advice. "It's strange," she confided during a quiet moment at that same barbecue, "watching everyone scramble to prove they always supported you." "Human nature," I shrugged. "Success has a way of rewriting history. For what it's worth," she said, "I'm glad they finally see what I always saw in you. But I'm sorry it took a bank statement to make it happen." Her words stayed with me. Was that what bothered me most? That my family's respect had been purchased with wealth rather than earned through understanding? That they now valued my advice not because they recognized my expertise, but because they saw my bank balance? A year after my father's birthday revelation, Forbes ran another feature on me, this time focusing not on the financial success of my company, but on its mission and impact. The reporter interviewed dozens of our users, ordinary people whose lives had been transformed by the financial knowledge they'd gained through our platform. A single mother in Detroit who had paid off $78,000 in debt and bought her first home. A couple in their 60s who had been able to retire 5 years earlier than planned. A young immigrant who had started a successful business using the principles he'd learned from our courses. I shared the article with my family not to impress them with more evidence of my success, but to help them understand what had always driven me. This was why I had left my comfortable job a decade ago, not to get rich, but to democratize financial knowledge that had previously been accessible only to the privileged few. To my surprise, this article seemed to impact them more deeply than the revelation of my wealth had. My father called me after reading it, his voice emotional. "I understand now," he said simply. "What you built isn't just about money. It's about impact. That's what I've been trying to tell you for 10 years, Dad." "I know," he acknowledged. "I wasn't listening. None of us were. We were too caught up in our narrow definition of success to see that you had found something more meaningful." His words healed something in me that I hadn't realized was still wounded. The validation I had sought wasn't about my wealth at all. It was about the value of my work, the meaning behind what I had built. 18 months after my revelation, we gathered once again at the restaurant where it had all started, this time to celebrate my mother's birthday. The dynamic was noticeably different. There was no tension bubbling beneath the surface, no barbs disguised as casual inquiries, no patronizing offers of help. Instead, my father proudly updated everyone on his growing YouTube channel. James discussed a pro bono project his firm had taken on after watching one of my videos about financial access in underserved communities. Emma shared news about an educational partnership between her school district and my foundation. As I listened to my family talk, I realized something profound had changed, not just in how they saw me, but in how they saw themselves and their relationship to money and success. My unconventional path had opened their eyes to possibilities they hadn't considered. My father had discovered a second career that brought him more joy than 40 years of traditional accounting. My brother was finding purpose beyond billable hours. My extended family was learning to manage their finances in ways that aligned with their values rather than arbitrary benchmarks of success. Later that evening, as the birthday celebration wound down, my father pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting me to be proud of you for who you are, not what you're worth." I nodded, uncertain where he was going with this. "I want you to know," he continued, "that while I'm impressed by what you've built, what makes me proudest is seeing the man you've become, your generosity, your vision, your commitment to helping others. Those things have nothing to do with your bank account." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." "I just wish I had seen it sooner," he said regretfully. "We wasted so many years." "They weren't wasted," I assured him. "They were just part of the journey. And look where we ended up." He smiled, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Better late than never, I suppose." As I drove home that night, I reflected on the strange path that had led me here. 10 years of being underestimated and dismissed. 10 years of building something remarkable while my family thought I was failing. 10 years of keeping my success a secret, only to discover that the revelation of my wealth wasn't the victory I had imagined it would be. The real victory came later, in quieter moments. My father asking me for advice on connecting with his audience. My brother admitting he was burned out and asking how I maintained passion for my work. My mother proudly sharing how my financial literacy programs were now being taught in her community center. These were the moments when I knew that my family finally saw me, really saw me, not as a bank account or a status symbol, but as someone whose work and values were worthy of respect. 2 years after my father's birthday dinner, I found myself in my office, looking at a framed copy of the financial statement that had changed everything. I had kept it as a reminder of that pivotal moment when I finally stopped hiding my success. My assistant knocked on the door, interrupting my thoughts. "Your father is here to see you." I looked up in surprise. "We hadn't planned a meeting." "Send him in." My father entered, carrying a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," he said. "Nothing that can't wait. What brings you by?" He placed the package on my desk. "I wanted to give you something. It's been exactly 2 years since you showed me that document that changed everything." I unwrapped the package to find a framed printout of the analytics from his first YouTube video showing modest but respectable engagement metrics. Beneath the numbers, he had written, "The beginning of my second act made possible by you." "Dad, this is—" "I know it's not billions," he said with a self-deprecating smile, but it's something I never would have done if you hadn't shown me that there are different paths to meaning and success. You didn't just change your life with what you built, you changed mine too. I stood and embraced him, feeling the years of tension and misunderstanding finally melt away completely. You know what the irony is? I said as we separated. I spent years hiding my success because I thought you wouldn't understand or appreciate it. But when I finally revealed it, the money wasn't what mattered. It was the door it opened for us to actually see and hear each other. He nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes we need a shock to break through our preconceptions. Your financial statement was that shock for me. It forced me to question everything I thought I knew about success, about you, about what matters. As he left my office that day, I looked at the two framed documents now sitting side by side on my desk. The financial statement that had proven my worth to my family and the analytics report that represented my father's brave step into a world he had once dismissed. The first had shown my family what I was worth. The second showed me what that was actually worth, not the billions in my bank account, but the bridge it had built back to my family, the minds it had opened, the second chances it had created. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Family dinner tonight at James's place. He's making that pasta you like. Dad's bringing his camera to film a day in the life segment for his channel. Uncle Gerald will probably ask you about Bitcoin again. You coming? I smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. 5 years after my revelation at the restaurant, my company continued to thrive beyond even my ambitious projections. We now reached over 50 million people worldwide, with content translated into 27 languages. Our foundation had provided scholarships to thousands of students from disadvantaged backgrounds, empowering the next generation with both financial knowledge and resources. My father's Small Business Sense channel had developed a devoted following among entrepreneurs and small business owners. At 75, he'd found an unexpected second career that brought him more fulfillment than his 4 decades as a traditional accountant ever did. He often joked that he was following in my footsteps, though we both knew it was more of a parallel path, 2 generations finding their voice in different epochs of the digital age. James and I had developed a surprisingly effective professional relationship. His legal expertise combined with my platform had resulted in a series on financial protection and legal literacy that had helped countless people navigate complex systems previously accessible only to the wealthy. Our childhood rivalry had evolved into something resembling mutual respect, perhaps even admiration. One evening, as I sat in my home office reviewing the final edits for my upcoming book, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Alex Reynolds? The Alex Reynolds from Financial Freedom? A young voice asked. Yes, it is. How can I help you? My name is Tyler. I'm 17 and I just wanted to thank you. Your videos helped me understand how to save for college. I'm going to be the first person in my family to go, and it's because I followed your advice about scholarships and grants and part-time work. I felt a familiar warmth spread through my chest, the same feeling I had experienced with my first viewer success story years ago. That's incredible, Tyler. Congratulations. The thing is, he continued, my parents think it's a waste of time. They say I should just get a job after high school like they did. They don't understand why I want something different. I smiled, recognizing the echo of my own story. Sometimes the people closest to us have the hardest time seeing new possibilities. It doesn't mean they don't love you. Did you ever deal with that? People not believing in what you were doing? I glanced at the 2 framed documents on my desk, symbols of both my professional success and the personal reconciliation it had eventually brought. I did, I told him, for a long time. But here's what I learned. True success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about staying true to your vision even when no one else sees it yet. And sometimes, if you're patient, they'll come around to seeing what you saw all along. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about how life has a way of coming full circle. 10 years ago, I had been dismissed as a dreamer, throwing away a promising career. Now I was in a position to encourage another young person facing similar doubts. The money, the company, the recognition, these were all wonderful validations of the path I had chosen. But the real wealth, I had discovered, lay in the impact. The lives changed, the mindsets shifted, the possibilities revealed. My family had called my YouTube career a phase and dismissed my vision. Now they didn't just respect my financial advice, they understood and valued the purpose behind it. The journey from dismissal to respect hadn't been about the zeros in my bank account, but about proving that success could look different than the narrow definition they had once clung to. And in that realization lay the greatest fortune of all, the freedom to define success on my own terms, and the satisfaction of knowing that, in the end, I had been right to follow my own path. Not because it made me rich, but because it made me whole.